My name is Emily Henderson, and I was abandoned when I was just 4 months old. No note, no goodbye. Just left in a hospital crib to cry until someone else picked up the pieces my parents dropped. Fast forward 25 years, those same people are back. Not to apologize, not to make peace, but to sue me for the $3.4 million inheritance my grandfather left me. But they had no idea, I'm not that abandoned baby anymore. If you've ever dreamed of seeing karma finally catch up to people who hurt the innocent, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this is one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. I grew up knowing one thing for sure. I wasn't wanted. When I was old enough to ask about my parents, my adoptive mom, Margaret, told me the truth. She said I was found at a hospital, wrapped in a pink blanket, with no one to claim me. The police report said my biological parents simply vanished. They didn't die. They didn't call. They just left. For years, I wrestled with that idea. How could anyone look at their own child and decide she wasn't worth it? I grew up with love, thanks to Margaret and her husband, Robert. They were good people, quiet, humble, not rich but rich in kindness. They told me I was special, but there were nights I'd lie awake wondering why my real parents didn't want me. Did I cry too much? Was I too small? Too inconvenient? When I turned 16, Margaret handed me an old file, my adoption records. Inside were 2 names, Evelyn and Mark Henderson. For the first time, my ghosts had faces. But this story really began to twist when I turned 24. A man named Harold Henderson, my biological grandfather, contacted me through a lawyer. He was dying and wanted to meet me. When I met him, he was in a wheelchair, frail, oxygen tubes around his face. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up. He grabbed my hand and whispered, "You're the one they threw away, and the one I could never stop looking for." He told me he'd begged my parents not to abandon me, that they'd been too young, too busy, too selfish. He said he'd searched for me for over 2 decades, hiring private investigators, following paper trails, until he finally found me. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen. When Harold passed away 6 months later, I was devastated, but also stunned when his lawyer told me he'd left everything to me. His house, his company shares, his savings, worth about $3.4 million. Apparently, my parents had expected to inherit it all. They'd cut ties with Harold years ago after he confronted them about abandoning me. And now, suddenly, I was the rightful heir. That's when the vultures came back. 2 months after the will was read, I received a letter. It was from Evelyn and Mark Henderson, my parents. They were suing me, claiming that I'd manipulated their dying father into changing his will. I remember sitting on my couch, holding that letter, my hands trembling. Anger, disbelief, sadness. It all mixed together until it burned in my chest. These people left me as a baby. Never called. Never wrote. And now they had the audacity to accuse me of manipulation. Well, not this time. I wasn't that helpless child anymore. I hired the same lawyer who had handled Harold's estate, a sharp, older man named David Cole. He'd known Harold personally and despised my parents' greed. "Don't worry," he said, sliding the lawsuit papers back into a folder. "We're not just going to win this case, we're going to expose them." Over the next few weeks, David helped me build a solid defense. We gathered witness statements from Harold's caretakers, doctors, even his neighbors. They all said the same thing. Harold adored me. He talked about me constantly after we met. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Mark tried every trick in the book. They claimed they'd left me in the care of relatives. They faked old messages, painted themselves as victims of a misunderstanding. But David had something better, the truth. The day of the trial, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. I wore the same silver bracelet Harold had given me, a reminder that I belonged to someone who truly cared. When Evelyn took the stand, she cried on cue, voice trembling. We were young and scared. We didn't know what to do. But then David stood up, calm and steady, holding up a series of photos. Hospital security footage from 25 years ago. Evelyn and Mark walking out the doors without me. Not leaving me with relatives. Not even looking back. The courtroom went silent. Mark tried to interrupt, shouting something about privacy invasion, but the judge silenced him. Then David presented Harold's handwritten letter, dated a week before his death. It said, "If Evelyn or Mark try to contest this will, remind them they lost their rights to my love when they abandoned my granddaughter." I felt a tear slip down my cheek as David read it out loud. For the first time, I wasn't the lost little girl. I was the woman my grandfather had believed in, and defended even from the grave. The judge didn't take long. He dismissed their case with prejudice, meaning they couldn't file again. But he went further, ordering them to pay all legal fees and damages for emotional distress. When the gavel hit, Evelyn gasped. Mark's face turned red with fury. They both looked at me like I'd stolen their lives. But I didn't steal anything. I earned it, through pain, survival, and truth. As they walked out of the courtroom, Evelyn whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "You'll regret this." I looked her in the eye and said, "I regretted being your daughter for 25 years. I'm done regretting anything." But the real revenge wasn't in court. It was what came after. A few months later, I used a portion of Harold's estate to set up a non-profit foundation for abandoned children, named after him. Every year it funds adoption resources, housing, and education for kids like me. Kids who were discarded but never defeated. When the local paper ran a story about it, guess who called me? Evelyn. She said she wanted to reconnect, to heal as a family. Her voice was syrupy, fake, the kind people use when they want something. I listened quietly, then said, "You had your chance to be my family. Now I'm building one without you." Then I hung up. A few weeks later I got an email from Mark. Short, bitter, pathetic. "You'll never find peace, you know." I didn't reply. 'Cause I already had. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about living so well that their cruelty loses all its power over you. They wanted me gone. They wanted me forgotten. But I turned their abandonment into my strength, and their greed into my victory. Now, every time I see a child with no one to hold them, I remember that little baby I once was. And I whisper to her, "You made it. You won." Sometimes the best revenge isn't money or punishment. It's peace. It's proving to the world that what was meant to break you only built you stronger. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever seen? And don't forget, subscribe for more stories where karma hits exactly where it hurts.